Okay, just a quick introduction. Just want to obviously thank everybody for joining us this evening. My name's Mark Young. I'm the football development manager for Wiltshire FA. So some of you will know me. I lead on facilities investments in Wiltshire. We've got Matt. Matt, do you just want to quickly jump in?
Yeah, hi everyone. As Mark's already said, thanks for taking the time to join us. Obviously, Gloucestershire clubs, I recognise some of the names and faces on the call, and some are new, which is great. My role, is the same as what Mark's just introduced. So, football development manager at Gloucestershire FA, and lead on facilities and investment across the county. So, yeah. Just
and then
a couple more people just joined us in the lobby, Mark. I don't know whether you or Ashley are able to admit them in.
We'll try. Oh, no, I can't.
That's right, I might be able to do it, actually. Go on, carry on.
Cool. And then the third musketeer, if you like, is Ashley, who's joining us from the Grounds Management Association. Ash, do you just want to jump on and say hi?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm the regional pitch advisor for the Southwest. I've been in the role since August last year. So I'm here to do your reports and advise you on what you need to do to improve your pitches.
Some of you will have already come across Ash. Some of you maybe dealt with his predecessor, who was Simon Johnson. Simon's moved across to the RFU. Sorry, he's still with the GMA, but he's moved across to rugby to work specifically on rugby pitches. Ashley's obviously come in, and he's going to be looking at specifically looking at football pitches. So hopefully you can pick up a lot of information this evening. And then moving forward, you've obviously got our contacts and his contacts with regards to following up on a lot of the information we're going to go through tonight. Matt, can you just dive onto the first slide, please?
Yeah.
Okay, so just in respects to the key outcomes for tonight's session, we appreciate that everybody will be at different points in their journey with regards to improving their pitches. So some bits will be relevant to some people, other bits will be relevant to other people. So there might be bits that you dip into and that you've got significant interest in, and there might be bits where you're already ahead of the game. But please use the chat function on the side throughout the presentation, and then if you've got any burning questions, you can obviously pop them in there. We can hopefully respond to them in a timely manner this evening. If there's absolutely loads, what we'll do is we'll take them away and we'll do a frequently asked questions on the back of the presentation this evening. Key outcomes for tonight. So we're obviously all here to look at improving grass pitches, natural turf pitches. What do we need to do to be able to access help going forward? What should our focuses be now and over the coming months? And you'll all appreciate that the weather plays a vital part in our maintenance programs and our renovations. And it's not as dry cut as winter, autumn, summer, and spring anymore. There's lots of fluctuation. It's about doing the right maintenance at the right time. So we'll touch a little bit on that. Where can you go to get further help and counsel? So there's not just us, there's a whole network out there, people that you can access, including each other, hopefully, to obviously look at ways you can improve your surface. And then the big one, hopefully for a lot of people, is what help's available financially to hopefully improve your pitches moving forward. Matt, okay, just a little bit in terms of setting the scene. Next slide, Matt. Okay, so the majority of grassroots football is played on public owned facilities, so local authority sites, and it'll come as absolutely no surprise that obviously going through the pandemic and pre-pandemic, local authorities are looking to they're looking at ways to save money, and they're very much directing most of their resources into statutory areas such as adult healthcare, children's services, because the demand and the budget associated with those areas is naturally increasing. So when they're looking across their budgets and they're looking at other areas, they're very, very quickly looking at items where they can put lines through with regards to cost saving. And as leisure and pitch maintenance is very much a discretionary service, it does mean that that we are seeing funding decreased with regards to pitch maintenance, and naturally that is having an effect on the quality of pitches that we have, and the experience of participants in the game. So what the data is telling us is basically pitches aren't good enough, and we need to do something about it. Yeah, hopefully that's why we're here tonight, to talk about it a little bit more and shed some light on areas where we can help. Next slide, please, Matt. Okay, so a lot of you may have seen in the news over the past couple of months that the Football Foundation via DCMS and the government are due to receive record levels of investment. We're talking hundreds of millions of pounds, that is being ring-fenced and directed into the improvement of sports facilities. There's two main priorities for the Football Foundation and the FA. It'll probably come as no surprise that 3G pitches are number one, purely down to the durability and the amount of games and training slots you can get on them in communities that need them. But secondly, there's a recognition that the grass pitches are incredibly important to football, and we can't move all, as much as a lot of people would like, we can't move all activity onto 3G pitches. We need to look after and invest really smartly into our into grass pitches across our counties and across the country. There is a little bit of rationalisation work going on at a strategic level. So there's questions being asked through playing pitch strategies and local facility football plans are in the sense of, do we need all the pitches that are currently out there at the moment, or is it a case of maybe we focus our resource, reduce the amount of pitches, invest heavily, and rather than have lots that are maintained at a basic level, can we increase investment and have a smaller stock of pitches that are at a good or an advanced level, but are much more durable in terms of match play and the amount of games that they can take. Thank you, Matt. Okay, and I'm going to hand over to Ash now, and he's just going to do a little bit around pitch power, which is a key tool and a key mechanism with regards to how we looking to engage clubs and local authorities in respects to looking and improving pitches. Ash, do you want to come in?
Yeah. Yeah, so if you want to go to the next slide, then please. Yeah, so previously assessments used to be done by a visit, but obviously that is quite hard to get across all the pitches with the limited number of RPAs. So pitch power has been sort of released last year. It allows you to self-assess your pitches and record the data yourselves. And obviously, as I said, it reduces the amount of time it takes for you to get your report. You will get seasonal advice on your pitches, and it works via a combination of photos and site conditions and soil samples, and then you put in the information yourselves. It's free to download from the Football Foundation website, and then free to use. And it's part of the criteria for you to get your funding is to perform a pitch power report. So next slide, please, Matt. So once you've found the app on the Football Foundation website, you sign up and get your own login. You then add your organisation from the drop downs, locate your grounds, and add all your pitches. You need to add every pitch that you want funding for. And next slide, please, Matt. So once you've done that, you'll get this screen come up here. So before to get ahead of yourself,
you need to take that.
You need to have details of your maintenance equipment you currently use, your annual budget for maintenance and renovation, a list of standard maintenance activities you carry out, info and training courses you've completed, and any pitch cancellations and usage info you had. And then you're ready to go out and start doing your tests, as long as you have a spade or a soil sampler, a tape measure, and a camera phone to go and complete your inspection. Next slide. So this is the first test you'll do in your first goal mouth, but you want to be away from, it does say goal mouth, but try to be away from any bare areas, because obviously we don't get an accurate reading then. This is a good example of how to take your photo by either putting the back of the soil sampler behind the tape measure or the spade, and they've got the camera nice and low so we can see the measurement on there. So if it's not, we have the ability to be able to change the measurement at our end if we don't quite agree with what's been put in. So yeah, that's how to measure your height of cut. And then this next assessment is to take a picture of your ground, they call it surface profile or ground profile. So you'll another tab will come up, say take a photo. Take it as sort of waist height. I'm getting beat now.
Sorry.
All right, mate.
Yeah, sorry.
So this will give you the idea is you get a metre square. There's 100 squares in that box. You count the squares of how many weeds are in it. You count the squares of how many grass in it. You get a percentage of weeds to grass. And if you take that away from the bare area, or if you're near the bare area, angle your camera slightly upwards so we can see a bit of a broader idea of what the pitch looks like. And then you input the percentages in there, and obviously make sure you leave out bare patches and don't put in any figures that add up to over 100%. So next slide. This one is a video, just an example of a video. I don't know if it will play, but will it play? Just give you an idea of what you need to do for your soil sample. So you can see he's getting a good section of soil out, a good sort of 150 mil deep, and knocking away the loose material to then be able to measure and see where the roots are. That's great. If you go to the next slide then, Matt. You have to hit click again, I suppose. So you'll end up with a sample that comes out like this, and then you can measure your root depth. So this would be the same sample you use to measure your soil depth, or your growing medium, as they call it, and your root depth. And then you would measure that input and put it into the box there again. Next slide. So using the same sample, you can measure your thatch levels. Your thatch is basically like broken down organic matter that is sat in the top, sort of old leaves of grass or stems, weeds, anything like that. And the way to find it is to sort of, if you work your way up the sample, you can feel as it gets to the top that it starts to get softer. And that softer area is generally thatch, which is not good because it will stop moisture getting into your into your pitches and stop feed getting in as well. And also leather jackets and pest and disease love eating it, so it's not a good one. So there's about 20 mil of it there, so you'd add that into your box again and then go on to the next test. So if you can, next slide. And this one just shows a good example of how to take a picture of your line markings, because here we can see your 6-yard box, the 18-yard box, and all the lines. So it gives a good idea as to how the pitch is marked. So that's good, and you'll get 3 grades that will come up on a drop down. They're above standard, standard, and below. The below standard one is one to look out for, because sometimes people use herbicide to mark their lines out, which is not a good idea. And herbicide should only be used by people who are qualified and for its actually designed use, because you'll end up with a line that's probably about a foot wide, and in the summer that'll crack when it dries out and need repairing. So yeah, next slide please. So then you get to your equipment page, where this example gives you a good idea of how much information is required, and the more information you put into this page, the better opportunity it gives us to recommend the correct machinery. So here they've got the name and the horsepower of the tractor, the year it's made, the condition of it, its engine size, and it's whether it's got 3-point linkage, which is very important, because if you've got a tractor that's got 3-point linkage, we can recommend other implements that will fit that machine. Then they've got the line marker and their mowing equipment, and they've done the same things there, but also mentioned what height of cut they have it in the summer and what height of cut they have it in the winter, which is really useful. But yeah, next slide please, Matt. So this page on the left, you've got your maintenance budget in there and your renovation budget, and then it's got a little overview of what standard maintenance activities you're already carrying out. And again, this is really useful because it then helps us to advise on what you need to do on top of what you're already doing. And that on the right gives you an idea of what that will look like. Okay, Matt.
Ash, it's just Mark. It's fair to say as much detail as clubs and local authorities can put into their pitch power app when they're taking samples, the more detail that allows you, more accurate and detail that allows you to be in your response when you're sending a report.
Absolutely, yeah. The more information we got, it saves time with us having to get back to the club to ask for more information.
Yeah.
And it also makes us a lot easier to give them a detailed report as to what they need to be able to, to improve their grounds.
Yeah, and just to kind of tie this up, so everybody knows, is when you submit your returns in the app, that goes to you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it comes straight to me to a dashboard.
Yeah.
And then I basically click on that club, and that gives me all that information to then compile a report from. I see all your pictures of your pitches, and the more accurate they are with the measurements on, it makes my life a lot easier to be able to create your report.
Brilliant. So the clubs and the facilities get a very, very detailed report back, and then that, we'll go on to talk about this in a little bit more detail in the presentation, but that basically then unlocks options, doesn't it, in terms of different options of where they can go in terms of finding resource to improve their pitches.
Yeah, and it potentially enables clubs to get potential funding for processes as long as they're recommended within the report.
Yeah,
that goes the same for pieces of machinery as well.
And I think that's really important to highlight, that the report that you issue to the clubs and the facilities is it's independent, isn't it? So it's an independent professional assessment, and any funding that you're going to come in for with regards to grounds maintenance, or natural turf pitch improvements via the Football Foundation, you would need this pitch power report as evidence to justify any grant application.
Yeah, and we try to make these reports most pitches do have similar issues with them, but we try to make them as bespoke as possible.
Brilliant. And then I think what's also useful just to touch on is the frequency of pitch power. So previously, for those of you that had Simon come out and visit your pitches, and you might have had Rob Donnelly come out and visit your pitches prior to that, you did get an initial report, and then it was about trying to get them back out to do a follow-up visit 12 months or 24 months later, so that the improvements could be then almost assessed, evaluated, with further recommendations being made at that point. I think one of the key benefits of pitch power is it enables you to do upload, take samples. Is it every 6 months?
Well, there's 2 windows, so it's to have one between September and November.
Yeah.
And then another one from January to March, so we can sort of advise from the September one on seasonal maintenance, and then we can do one for end of season maintenance in the second one, in the second time period, in March period.
So the key, sorry, Matt, carry on.
I was just going to add, like, we've got quite a few clubs and organisations on the call tonight that some have already accessed pitch power, which is absolutely brilliant, and some perhaps haven't. And hopefully off the back of this tonight, then, we'll share all these slides and you'll feel confident to go out and give it a go. And, as county FAs, we can provide some support and guidance as well. The other thing was a lot of the clubs on the call benefited from the Football Foundation's pitch preparation fund, going back probably 18 months or so ago now. And as part of your agreement to signing up to that grant, there was a commitment from you as clubs to get on and start using pitch power. So I know there's a number of clubs in Gloucestershire that have already been doing it, but there are also a handful that have accessed that funding already, and perhaps haven't had chance or opportunity to go on and start doing their pitch power assessments yet.
Yeah.
But wow, what would you say, Ash, for sort of assessing a one pitch or 2 pitch site? Is it sort of an hour per pitch, or? No,
it's about half an hour a pitch.
Yeah.
For 11v11, and then when you go down to the smaller, I think the 577 and 555, you only have to do 2 samples because obviously the pitch is smaller, so it's a bit quicker. I thought I'd just add as well that obviously the majority of it is done on pitch power, but if you get anything unusual, I will try and fit in coming out to see you. So the support is still there physically as well as on the via email or phone. We're here to support you.
Brilliant. I'm not sure what you can see on the presentation or on the screen at the moment, but I've come out of the presentation mode because I was struggling to see the chat function. But
I can still see the key focus page at the moment.
Okay, that's right, that's fine. We've had one question that's come into the chat which relates to pitch power, and it was, do clubs get reminders to do the assessments? Yes, they should do. There should be some communications that come directly from the Football Foundation on that. And is what you'll find is if you go to log into pitch power when you're it'll be locked basically once you've submitted an assessment. If you try to submit one too quickly afterwards, then you won't have full access to it. And once it becomes unlocked, obviously then you'll be able to go in and do your reassessments.
I will mention as well, one good thing is to try not to leave your submission to the last minute of each because then we have 21 days to get the reports in, and if we get a sudden influx of reports, it makes it quite difficult to get them done within those 21 days. So if they come in sporadically over that time, it's better. I know I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, there's another thing that's just popped into the chat. I think it's I don't know if it's Courtney Michael or Michael Courtney, but the individuals said that pitch power and process was hard to get head round at first, but 3 assessments later, and it's really straightforward. And it's opened up Football Foundation funding for those people, and lots of other support available as well. So, you know, that's an example from a club who are using it. And yeah, appreciate it. You know, at first it looks a bit daunting perhaps to get your head round, but the other thing to add is the video that Ash showed in the presentation just a moment ago, there's actually a load of other videos and help and step-by-step guides once you're in the app, isn't there? And links to YouTube videos, etc. So
yeah, there's one for every test.
Yeah. And if a report comes into you, Ash, and it's, you know, some pretty key information missing, what happens then?
I'll sort of firstly I'll drop the club an email to the contact asking for some more information. Yeah, and generally get the information there. If sometimes the photos aren't quite up to standard, then I might have to send it back and reset the submission. And there would be a little request in the that would come up on the report as you get it back, and then you've got 2 weeks to resubmit it, 14 days. But I would also follow that up with an email explaining more about what the detail that I require is.
Brilliant. Okay. Doesn't look like there's any other questions that have come into the chat at the moment, and we will have an opportunity for more questions at the end of all the sort of presentations. So I think we're probably good to move on. Go on, sorry.
Just saying, if it's worth mentioning, it might be a good idea if people want to get, the quicker people can get a report in, the better, because there is going to be some work being done from the 31st of March. So it'd be good for people to get their reports in before then if they can. If they can't, it doesn't matter, because they can if they wanted it quickly, they can, but it'll be all back online pretty quick. So just thought I'd put that out there.
Yeah, perfect. Mark, anything else from you to add before we move on to the?
No, just to kind of extend the offer. I mean, and I'm sure you're the same, Matt. If there's Wiltshire clubs that need help doing a pitch power visit, and they want me to come out and help them do that, then I've been out to a few sites already and done a few for clubs. So yeah, the offer's there.
Yeah, brilliant. Right, I will. So sorry, can you see just the slide in presentation mode, or is it the PowerPoint template you can see?
I can see it in presentation mode.
So you can just see just the slide, you can't see the other window?
No, I can only see the slide, yeah, that says key focus.
In that case, carry on.
Yeah, so I'm going to do a little overview of end of season renovations for football pitches. So if you go to the next slide, Matt.
Is that transitioned or not? No.
No, it's still the same slide.
Is it? Just bear me one moment.
No worries.
I'll have to stop presenting and reshare again. Just bear with me. So now you can see it as PowerPoint, not in presentation mode. Is that right?
Yeah.
There we go. How's that?
That's it. Great. Right. So we all know that. Oh, here we go. Gone back.
Sorry.
Brilliant. The primary reason for mowing is to control the vegetation, and under normal circumstances, it's best to only cut a third of the leaf to avoid stressing the plant, and then also with that you don't get lots of grass lying everywhere. But prior to renovations, it's especially if you were going to have somehow like heavy scarification done, it would be good to reduce the height of cut gradually to avoid plant stress, and it will also remove the amount of waste that's going to be removed. So you can imagine if you had really long grass and you run a scarifier over it, which wants to get in down to the thatch, you'll end up having to get through all your long grass first. So it's always good to get it shorter first. This will also help with when you apply top dressing or overseeding, as it will make it easier to brush that seed and sand into any holes that have been made by aeration or by the Scarifying, so it'll be a lot easier to get back to a nice smooth surface. This should be carried out in dry conditions, but not drought, because that again will put the plant under stress. Next slide. So there's another good way to a pre-maintenance activity for your renovations is to carry on turf grooming with a surface groomer, or you can use chain harrows if you haven't got a groomer. We'll know that, well, groomers are great because you can do 4 activities in one pass, and it's good practice to keep grooming your pitch prior to an aggressive scarification or part of a light season renovation program. This will help to remove any debris prior to renovations and give a light scarification prior to seeding or top dressing if an aggressive scarification is not required. So if you didn't need to really hit the pitch hard, you could just run your groomers over it after cutting the grass shorter. This would give you a gentle scarification ready for overseeding. The next slide. So if you were going to go for more aggressive scarification, this is the type of machine you'd be looking at. This one does pick up the waste, but some of them don't. So this is something to be aware of if you're using contractors, or depending on what machinery they have. And scarification can be used in different forms as a light thing to just lift grass or remove surface debris and dead grass and rubbish. But in a renovation program, it would be used. You could go into 20 to 40 mil to actually get that dead thatch out, and you can. And obviously that would have to be done by a machine. You can scarify smaller areas by hand, by raking, or with a powered equipment. So you could use pedestrian machine, so a smaller area. Next slide, Matt. Sorry about that. Just turn that on silent. So this is a little diagram to show you sort of what scarifying does. So as a guide in the growing season, the grass plant is scarified to clean out dead material such as old grass leaves. And obviously you've got to be careful with power machinery, because if you've got high spots, they can obviously, the machine set at one level, it will smash those, really hit those high spots hard, and you can make a mess, which would mean they would need more repairing. So generally, that's why this process should be carried out by an experienced groundsperson or contractor. But as you can see at the left-hand side there, the left-hand side of the slide is that green layer is your thatch layer, which is stopping moisture and nutrients getting through. Also, stop the roots from going any deeper. As they've cut these slots in it, water can get in, air can get in, any gases that are in there can come out, and nutrients can get to the roots. Also creates a nice heap for your sand and your seed to fall into. See, literally after 9 to 10 weeks, you've got better roots that quickly. So next slide, please. So this is more about aeration or decompaction. So this operation should take place when the conditions allow. You could imagine if it's too dry, your tines won't go in. You could break the machine, including the tractor. If you've got a reduced budget, this is the one thing that you will benefit from the most, because it will give you the greatest improvement, and it also is adopted for good practice. It's best to do this twice a year. You can do it more, but obviously clubs probably can't afford that. But even once a year, it's better than not doing it at all. It will increase aeration, improve your grass growth, for improving the soil, because any gases that are in that soil will come out. The oxygen, any air can get in. Just got to move that. It will help with nutrients uptake, give you deeper rooting, drought stress tolerance, and thatch breakdown, as you can see in the little diagram here. Also, again, improves your root depth within 9 to 10 weeks. So if you do that in conjunction with Scarifying as well, it's brilliant. Also, this, if you've got deeper roots, it's going to make your pitch more resilient to play and improve your carrying capacity. So you'll get more games will be able to be played on your pitches with less damage. Next slide.
Ash, it's just Mark.
Yeah.
Just in terms of scarification versus aeration. I mean,
Yeah.
if a club had a limited budget, which one would they go for?
I'd go for the aeration, because your aeration will still reduce your thatch level. All depending, it would all depend on their assessment as well, though, depending on the amount of thatch they had. I mean, if they had something like 35, 40 mil of thatch, then you want to scarify it. Aeration is definitely the best sort of bang for buck process that would improve pitches the most for their money, but you definitely have to do it on an assessment basis, pitch by pitch.
With regards to a lot of the assessments you're seeing, are you seeing excessive amounts of thatch?
Not really. It's not, because a lot of these pitches will be played on a lot, so you're getting natural scarification with play, and that is kicked out by the people playing with football boots. It's generally on pitches that we go to that may not have been used for a little while, or they've been cut, they've been left to get long, and then they've been cut, and there's long grass been lying everywhere, and then that has increased the amount of thatch on their pitch. So it's generally a case of when pitches are brought back into use that haven't been used for a long time. And this presentation is probably more, it's just giving an overview of sort of best practice, and if you have the money, what you can do.
Perfect.
So this is over to top dressing. So this is that is done at the end of the season, and it will restore your surface levels after play. So all your divots, this will even this out. It will improve drainage as well, because sand, obviously water runs through sand very well. If you've done your aeration and your scarifying, but either the sand can then go into those holes and improve your drainage. Bigger areas that be done with a tractor mounted spreader, and small areas you can do it by hand with a shovel, a broom, a back of a rake, whatever you can get your hands on, really. Next slide. So again, this is basically a tractor mounted brush there. One too far, Matt.
Sorry.
Right. Again, same for small areas, you can do it by hand or with a drag mat. And again, due to the nature of this work, it's best to be done by specialist contractors who have the appropriate machinery. And it's good practice to seed after you've dressed, and then brush in the seed and the sand together to get good contact with seed onto these. Next slide.
Ash, just with regards to top dressing, when clubs receive their reports from you, do you make specific recommendations around materials?
We just basically say you have to have a suitable quality sports sand, because you can't use builder's sand. You don't want to use sharp sand. It has to be sterilized. As you can imagine, sharp sand it's exactly what it's called. It's sharp sand. You're gonna, if a player slides in that, potentially you're going to cut their legs. It wants to be supplied by a sports turf specialist supplier.
Perfect.
So then, if you overseed and you want to overseed with a dwarf rye mix for sports turf, preferably it has to be for winter sport. And ryegrass is generally chosen in this climate because it's good, has good germination rates in low temperatures, and it establishes quickly. It's good wear tolerance, has a strong root system, and it responds well to feed. So You can overseeding with light type trussing in areas. So obviously you want to do it towards March, April time, because in the winter the ground temperature will be too low and you won't get germination. And the more cover you get, the greater opportunity to bring grass on. So if you've fed, your grass will improve and get thicker, and that in itself it carries on getting thicker and thicker. You want to keep heavy kit off the pitch when it's wet after you've done this, and it's good practice to keep some seed in stock in case you get any little patches come up so you can touch them up. Next slide, please. So I think this was one of the questions that was asked previous to the webinar about repairing goal mounds. So this can be by hand or with a machine. In that area there where it's wet, you obviously want to let that dry out. It may be a good idea to get a fork in there first and see if you can get some of that water to drain away a bit quicker. Then you can either just tilt that up with a fork, cover it with some seed, bit of dressing, and then I would put a bit more seed on top to let that and brush all that in level. Sometimes you'll find that this area is hollow and the areas around it are higher. If you get to that point, sometimes these areas need to be rotivated and then leveled out so that you don't get big high spots in front of your goal mounds. And the one below here, that's been cut out and returfed, which is, if you've got a short time period between end of play and start of the new season, this is a good way to get things established quickly. Then you would apply a fertilizer to this. If you were doing this, if you were top dressing, you would include this in the top dressing program. So you just end up putting a bit more sand here and seeding more in these worn areas than you would an overseed. It's good to relatively cheap way of getting this established is to use germination sheets. They hold moisture in, stop weed seeds getting in there, and it also keeps it nice and warm and speeds up germination. And fencing it off is another good idea. So next slide, please. This is just one about feeding. So in the summer, it's good practice to put spring and summer feed down an NPK fertilizer, which will generally contain more nitrogen than phosphorus and potassium, which will improve your grass coverage, speed up that growth. The only thing you're aware of is it will possibly make your grass grow quicker, so it will require more cutting. So speak to your your local consumable representative. And a soil analysis is always a good idea, and a lot of companies do these for free. And next slide, please.
Ash, do you just want to touch on the slow release fertilizer, because I've seen a lot of reports going out.
Yeah, so
I've seen a lot of reports going out with slow release.
Yeah, so your best slow release and control release. So a slow release is released over a certain period of time, but a controlled release is actually temperature controlled. So it will only release when the plant actually will take that fertilizer on. So it might cost a little bit more to start with, but in the long run, it's a much more cost-effective way to feed your pitches, because these feeds can last from 3 to 5 months and will be released over that period of time. Whereas if you buy a cheap compound fertilizer, you literally get 8 weeks flush of loads of growth and you'll be cutting like mad, and then it all just drops off. So definitely, when you get your quotes from your contractors for your fertilizer, you want a slow release, but preferably a controlled release NPK spring and summer fertilizer. Yeah, thanks for reminding me of that one, Mark.
We had some fertilizer applied to our site in devices, and traditionally it was always a liquid application, but it was resin pellets.
Right.
Which I'm guessing, that must be the slow release, is it?
So what was that, in a liquid?
No, sorry, it was a pellet.
Sorry. Yeah, so yeah. It will be a controlled or slow release will be a granular fertilizer. Liquid fertilizers are great, but they're expensive and they only really work to top up on a controlled fertilizer. Yeah. Okay, is that okay, Matt?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So this is just a bit more to touch on if you guys are interested in getting some more information. If you go on the Grounds Management Association website, you can go on there and look at the toolkit for free. And there's videos on there about a lot of these processes if you want to get a bit of information on there. There's also information about membership, which can give you discounts to courses. And something we should touch on is that's part of your pitch power assessment for getting funding. Two of your members of staff need to do the online level 1 winter pitch course, which is I think you get loads of information that you read through, and then you get a multiple choice question at the end that you have to complete within, I think, I can't remember the amount of time, but it's really worth doing. So that's me done there. Then Matt.
Cool. I will just. Sorry, I can just see the full screen of presentation at the moment, so just drop out and I'll hold it there for a moment and just see if we've had any questions come in.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a couple that have came in. So in your opinion, what are the pros and cons of slitting versus time aeration?
So slitting will give you basically a slice, so it's different to actually a solid tine. If you're talking deep tine aeration, you get a really deep hole that's about maybe 10 to 12 inches deep, which will relieve compaction. Then you'll get heave that will actually move the soil up, and it'll make fissures in that. But that's a process that you only do, say, once or twice a year. If you combine that with your slitting, you keep those holes open, because you can imagine if you're when you play on a pitch, those holes get closed up by play. Even running your little groomer over or a solid tine, it will open those holes back up. I mean, they all have benefits. The only thing with slitting, you really want to stop slitting around February, because as things start to dry out, you can get cracking appear from slitting. And with slitting, you always go the same direction, because if you go two different directions, you can get like a star sort of appear, and then you'd end up with a star-shaped crack in your pitches. They're just different because they're done at different depths. With your solid tine, that'll be at 6 inches. You're decompacting at that level. Then if your slitter goes down, say 8 inches, you're decompacting at that level, and then your solid tine goes down 10 to 12 inches, sometimes 14 inches. You're avoiding getting pans at those levels, because if you use the same machine over and over again, you still get compaction deeper down. So that's how beneficial each different type of aeration is.
Brilliant, thank you. There's another question. So this is from a site in Gloucester, I think, looking at the name. Is there any update on access to Virta drainer availability for smaller clubs? I suppose I'm happy to pick that one up. But there's no kind of central pool of equipment as such in Gloucestershire or across the county. But the grass pitch maintenance funding that we will touch on in a little bit does open up opportunities for clubs to bring in contractors to do that kind of specialist maintenance that perhaps smaller clubs don't really need or have experience or capacity to do. There was another question around where would you purchase the turf? I assume that was in terms of the goalmouth renovations. I don't know whether you want to pick that up, Ash, but
well, I can't sort of recommend any particular brands, unfortunately, but you could speak to the same, then you're a consumable supplier in terms of like fertilizer, right? But some of the you can't really go to the garden centre because you can't really guarantee that it's going to be the right mixture. So you want a ryegrass mixture turf. You'd have to find a local supplier, a turf supplier, and ask them for a ryegrass sports mix, basically.
One of the things I remember being mentioned before, Ashley, was around, depending on the size of the site, but if they've got space, you know, off the pitch where there's potentially, if it's a small sort of repair, then is there, you know, could clubs be clever and use sort of patches of turf from off the playing surface to bring
They
in?
could, as long as they're not sort of bringing weeds into the pitch.
Yeah.
Then yeah. I mean, that's something when I've worked on golf courses, we had an area that was basically called a turf nursery, and we, you know, had an area which we would use to repair greens or tees or bits of fairway. So yeah, that is possible.
Okay. Yeah.
Mark, can I just jump in there?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, no, just to kind of expand on the point around equipment bank. Some clubs from Wiltshire may be aware, may not be aware that we do have a tractor and a Virta drainer that we can deploy at cost rate. We've got details on our website. Or if anyone wants to contact me on the back of the call, then yeah, we very similarly we recognise that a lot of pitches were decompacted. We went out and bought the tractor and the Virta drainer as a county FA with match funding with the Football Foundation, because we obviously believe that it would make a huge impact on the quality of pitches going forward. So Wiltshire clubs, and to be fair, any clubs that are in a close vicinity of Wiltshire, so there might be some just over the border, Matt, that can probably jump on and make use of that as well.
Yeah, certainly there'd be a few that would be within the sort of distance, I'd imagine. Cool. There's a couple other questions that have just, before we move on, that have just come in. One, I think we'll pick up in a moment, which come from Steve at Randwick. Do you need to own the pitch to get Football Foundation to fund the improvements? I think Steve will pick that one up in a few slides' time. And then another question's just come in, one for you, Ash, probably. You mentioned a Turf Groomer. Can you just explain a little bit more around what that is and what that allows the club to do if they had one?
Yeah, so there's various types of Turf Groomer. They generally fit onto a 3-point linkage in a tractor. And you'll have like a small spiker slitter at the front. Then there's generally a little rake at the back. And the next implement is a rake, and then a very light sort of polishing roller and a brush. So it's great for, say, after a match and you've got your divots or you've got a slightly uneven surface, you can do those 4 processes in one pass with that machine. In saying that, all of the implements are independent, so you can say take the spiker out. You probably wouldn't, but you could take the rake out if you didn't want to. If it was, say, if your pitch was quite sparse and you didn't want to rake it, you could move the rake up and just spike it and brush it and roll it. But they're a really good, not stupidly expensive bit of kit that can really improve your pitch.
I think it'd be fair to say. Oh, go on, Mark.
I was just going to expand on Ash's point there. I was having a look at them online today. I think you can pick them up for about $2,500.
Yeah, there's certain brands that are between sort of $2,500 to I think about $5,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And generally, I was just going to say, a lot of the pitch power reports you tend to get, you know, and if there's machinery sort of suggested or needed, quite often that kind of multi-tool groomer sort of tool is recommended, isn't it, for quite a lot of the reports?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Ash, do you just want to touch on rolling the pitch there? Because I still think there's quite a mean, I've spoken to a few clubs over the last few weeks around. They've kind of had a game on a Saturday, and then they think the best thing to do is put the roller on the pitch to flatten it.
Rolling is very old school, to put it bluntly. All it does is compact the surface of your pitch, which then stops the roots growing down deeper, which then makes them easier to be kicked out. It also, because your surface is then compacted, it promotes the growth of unwanted grasses like Poa annua, which is basically annual meadowgrass, which dies off every year and is very shallow rooted, and just it goes all yellow this time of year and sort of wiry and just kicks out, and you end up with just loads of bare patches. So, I mean, if you're mowing your pitch and it's, say, a roller mower that's got rollers on it, that's enough rolling. And this groomer has got a very light roller, and I use the term polishing roller because that is all it's doing. It's literally just smoothing out some of the little, say, divots that the spiker might pluck up. There's not really any weight to it at all. Rolling is to be avoided, really. Is
it fair to say it's counterproductive if you're spending a lot of money aerating and scarifying?
Well, I talked to Sasha from Hampshire FA the other day, and there was one ground that had been deep tine aerated, and the cricket club went and rolled it the next day. So they'd spent all this money aerating their pitches, and then it was rolled directly afterwards. So they've just wasted their money. So it is counterproductive, and you'll find most of the implements that you use, like your mower, your groomer, a deep tine aerator, they all have like a little polishing roller on the back, and that is all you need. The only sport that needs a roller is a cricket square or a tennis court, and that's it.
I think that's a really key point to pick up on, because I can think of a site in Gloucestershire where same things happen, where the cricket club have rolled the outfield. And I suppose the thing to highlight is if you play on a multi-sport site, and you might be a football club that want to play all winter, and then I suppose you've got to have a good relationship really with the cricket club, is what I'm saying. Work together, because you don't want to be investing money in your football pitches and trying to get top quality football pitches, and then the cricket sort of I suppose working against each other really. I mean, where it can work together, definitely.
That's something we can help out with, because there are RPAs that cover the cricket side of things, and we can liaise with each other and help these grounds that team football clubs and cricket clubs out to help them do the right thing. Because I mean, with cricket, if you're cutting your outfield, you're going to be cutting it generally with cylinder mowers, which will have rollers on as well. So that's enough rolling.
There's one other, not a question, but a comment that's come in, which is Paul from Staunton and Course. If anyone would like to see a turf groomer, they have one, and you're more than welcome to come along and see. I know Paul at Staunton's has been engaged with the grass pitch improvement program for a couple of years now, and they've seen some real progress and real positive improvements on their site. So certainly a good one if Gloucester clubs want a site and a club to look at. It's a good one to have a look at, definitely.
Yeah, definitely go and have a look.
Cool, right. I will bear with me a moment. I might have to just try it. Is that still in presentation mode for everyone?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's presentation mode.
Perfect. I think next sort of few slides, and back over to myself and Mark. This next one is really just to highlight. Some of you may already be members or have joined this, but there's an online groundskeeping community. It's an online Football Foundation platform, absolutely free of charge to join. There's people on there from all over the country. There's various different training cards and resource cards that clubs can use and access. But the main thing, the most positive thing, is it's a bit of a forum. People quite often go on there when they're having, if they've got particular challenges, and people from other clubs who've had a similar challenge just down the road or neighbouring county will come back with sort of how they've managed it or how they've overcome that challenge. There's various other resources on there. The regional pitch advisors, so Ashley and his colleagues from across the country, are all on there, as are County FA members of staff and Football Foundation staff as well. So we can circulate further details of it after tonight when we share slides, etc. But certainly, if you've got volunteer groundskeepers within your club, this is a good place for them to go to for various resources and areas of support. Don't think, is there anything else to add on that, Mark or Ashley?
No, I think you covered it there, Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
I'm in presentation mode, so I can't see if there's any chat comments in the chat. But if you're already on there and it's useful, perhaps just pop a note in the chat and we can sort of highlight that at the end or in a bit, and hopefully it might encourage a few more to get on there and use it as well.
Just to add, actually, Matt, the RPA sometimes put polls up just to ask sort of questions about ground practices to see what volunteers know, and then when they do those polls, we see the percentages of what we don't see who's put them, but we see the percentages of what people do know from those polls, and then we put a learning card up relevant to that poll afterwards. So it's quite useful for that.
I mean, when I've been on and had a little look, there's been some really great and creative ideas around, clubs who perhaps don't have very much budget for pitch maintenance or machinery, and there's been some really creative ideas of sort of adaptations to machinery, and I think those sort of things which could help you massively was something I thought would be really valuable for clubs.
Definitely.
Cool. Right, we'll move on because the next sort of I can't remember, here is 6 or 7 slides are what you're all probably waiting to hear on now in terms of, this is great, there's pitch power, we get a report, we know what we need to do, but how do we make it happen, I suppose. And these next few slides will just go over the various sort of funding routes that having a pitch power assessment opens up, and being engaged with the sort of pitch improvement program, what it opens up for you. So as Mark mentioned, one of the priorities for the FA, for the Football Foundation, for the Grounds Management Association is around improving pitch quality. Feedback regularly whenever there's grassroots surveys is that the pitch quality is poor. People want better pitches to play on, and there's never going to be enough funding to fund all of the for everyone to have access to a 3G pitch. So grass pitches have clearly got a real important part to play. I think about 18 months ago, maybe 12 months ago, Football Foundation launched what's now known as the Grass Pitch Maintenance Funding. And this essentially is off the back of having a pitch power report. It opens up opportunity to access a grant over a 6-year period. The kind of agreement, I suppose, is over a 10-year maintenance plan period. The funding is over a 6-year period. Clubs outside of a National League system are currently eligible, as are charities who organise or are responsible for maintaining sites. And essentially, off the back of the pitch power report, depending on what grade or what quality standard the pitch is coming out as, it opens up opportunity to access funding. So if it's an 11-a-side pitch and the pitch is of a poor quality, potentially you can apply for up to £2,500 per pitch to allow you to do those kind of specialist maintenance sort of procedures and work that's required to bring in materials, seeding and fertilizing, and access and bring in contractors to help you do that work. So this is really looking at sort of the maintenance up above and beyond your basic cutting and line marking, which hopefully you might already you're already doing as a club, or your landlords are already doing as a club. As I say, it's aligned to that pitch power assessment. So if you're not on there already, this opportunity for this funding wouldn't be open to you at the moment. It's currently targeted at clubs, in the grassroots game outside, well, from step 7, so Gloucestershire, Wiltshire County League, and below. National League system clubs who are responsible or outside of their main stadia pitch have responsibility for maintaining additional grass pitches on the site could apply for those additional grass pitches, but not for their main stadia pitch. So anything from step 6 upwards wouldn't be eligible.
Matt, I think just go back a slide. I think it's important just to highlight it's a tapered grant as well.
Yes.
So it's a 6-year grant, and what you will get is, if we use the example of a one pitch site, it's got an 11v11 pitch. In year 1 and 2, if it's scored as poor or basic, you'll get £2,500 in year 1. You'll get £2,500 again in year 2, but then in year 3 and year 4, you'll get 66% of the total of £2,500. My maths isn't great on the spot, but whatever 66% of 2,500 is, you'll get in year 3 and 4, and then in years 5 and 6, you'll get 33% of the total of £2,500. Obviously the principle is you'll get help from day one, but then as the grant and the maintenance plan is delivered over time, you'll take on more and more responsibility, and it'll become more well, it should be built into your operating costs as a site and as a club.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I sort of briefly mentioned, the aim, nationally for the FA and the Football Foundation is around getting to a minimum of 20,000 pitches that are a good standard. Essentially, it's around, the funding is targeting getting pitches up to a good or above standard. So if the pitch comes out as basic or poor, which is all done via scoring matrix on the pitch power assessment that Ash would provide back for you. If that pitch comes out as basic or poor, it opens up the opportunity to access that full funding if it's an 11v11 pitch at £2,500. If your pitch is already at a good standard, it's not to say there's not funding available, but it's not the same amount. So I think you get £750 if it's an 11v11 pitch that's already at a good standard. And the idea is you've already got a good maintenance program and regime in place, and there's some support there to keep that pitch at a good standard or higher. And as we mentioned earlier on, as you commit to or access this funding, obviously there's a commitment to ongoing assessments to keep reporting via pitch power on the pitch quality, so that we can see that and track the improvements that are being made. I think we've kind of touched on this already. Essentially, it's there to support you to bring in a pitch maintenance contractor to help deliver some more of those sort of specialised areas of work, specifically around sort of grass pitch maintenance funding and materials to help improve those pitch qualities, improve the pitch quality. And as Mark mentioned, it's tapered, so it's a 67% grant, which over the first 6-year period of the 10-year programme, that grant gradually reduces, and the club contribution should increase to deliver the pitch quality, hopefully.
Can I just jump in there around maintenance contractors?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, and Ash may want to kind of jump on the back of this as well. Please be very, very careful with the pitch maintenance contractors you're using. It is really, really important that you use a reputable firm that has significant experience in carrying out pitch maintenance and pitch renovation works. Naturally, like any trade, there are people out there that will cut corners and look to increase their profit margins by not delivering the level of service that you're expecting of them. So it would be very much once you've got your pitch report and once you're getting quotes off contractors, please sense check them with Ash and with us to make sure that you are getting best value and good quality work. Is that fair to say, Ash?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair to say. And just as I've heard stories of pitches being deep tie and aerated, and they've done them in like an hour or 2 hours. To deep tie and aerate a pitch, you're looking at sort of half a day for a full size pitch. So just use that as a guide. Another way to find some reputable contractors is to actually look on the GMA website at the corporate members list. I think that's accessible, but I'll check that one. But you can, if they're members of the GMA, they're generally reputable, so worth checking that out.
Yeah.
Or speak to other clubs that have used contractors, and word of mouth is always a good way of finding out, a good contractor, definitely.
The devil really is in the detail. Also, with regards to the consumables that they're going to be putting onto your pitches as well. So as many questions as you can ask and as much information you can find out prior to the work being taking place. Obviously, the more chance you've got of spending your money on the right things, and yeah, I hope, well, allowing it to have the effect that we all want it to have.
Yeah, and exactly what Mark said, I'm here to help. If you've got any questions, drop me an email or give me a call, and I'll help you as best I can through it.
Perfect. I think we've kind of sort of touched on this already, but this, I suppose, if you want to use the funding and you've got people with the appropriate sort of health and safety training and the knowledge and experience, but you can use the grant to access and purchase the materials yourself if you want to. There's obviously various kind of sort of legal and health and safety requirements that need to be considered for that. But it's just something to bear in mind with regards to grass pitch maintenance fund. So
probably should add to that, Matt, that if any kind of weed treatment that's going to be done would have to be done by a specialist contractor who is qualified to apply those chemicals. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So, are you eligible? First step, have you had a pitch power assessment report? As I say, that's, if the clubs come to Mark or myself and, contact their county FAs, first question will be, have you had a pitch power assessment report? If yes, great, you're sort of on the pathway. There's a few bits around permission to do the work. So one of the questions you had earlier on was what sort of the ownership requirements. With regards to this grass pitch maintenance funding, you're eligible if you are currently the freeholder, if you have a lease in place or a license to use the site. If you don't have either of those, you are still eligible. However, you would need we've got basically a pitch maintenance agreement template that we can share with you, and that would essentially be you going to your landowner and basically getting a written agreement that they're happy for the club or organisation to access Football Foundation funding to improve and enhance the pitch quality. So if you're playing on a local authority pitch, but you haven't got, a long-term lease or security on the site, you can still go and access the funding, but you would need to get this template pro forma completed beforehand. And we've got ones that we can provide and share with you if you fall within that kind of third bullet point up at the top there.
And Matt, just to add on to that, hot off the press, education establishments are going to be eligible as well. So if you play on a school site, then give the school or the education establishment that you're working with a nudge and get them involved in this process as well, because as of it was the last couple of days, they've been moved into the eligible pile, haven't they, Matt?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's a good point. Forgot to mention that. Sorry. So there's grass pitch maintenance funding. There are also grants available for machinery. We talked about it. Pitch power assessment quite often comes back if you haven't already got machinery, say suggesting this would be sort of the basic machinery you need to be able to sort of cut and maintain your pitch. So there's up to 75% grant available for that. The club or school or other organisation would need to contribute the other 25%. Within that, second-hand machinery is eligible. You'd have to provide some form of evidence of safe storage of, if it's a tractor, cutter, those sort of things, evidence of safe storage and insurance. Generally, it's all geared around what's suggested in that pitch advisor, pitch power report. So we're not going to be, it's not a case of encouraging clubs to go out and purchase, Virta drainers themselves, which are quite a big cost and realistically only probably get used sort of 2 or 3 times a year. That's where you can access the grass pitch maintenance funding to bring in that expertise. But if you've got it can be a one pitch or a multi-pitch site, and you haven't got any sort of tractor, cutter, anything like that at the moment. We talked about the grooming multi-tools. Those sort of things can all be eligible under the machinery grant.
I was
say that's
just to.
Sorry, I was just going to say on the second-hand machinery side of things, is it right that you've got to have a 12? It's got to have a 12-month warranty.
Yeah, I was just about to add that on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Correct. Yeah. Good point.
Matt, just while we're on that slide as well. So there might be a few clubs in the National League system that are sat on the call. If they are, then this exact process. So pitch power is also the precursor for you being eligible for machinery via the Football Stadium Improvement Fund. So if you're wanting a grant for machinery via the FSIF, then you would also need to complete the pitch power and have Ash do an assessment and make the same recommendations as what a community club would do coming in for a normal football foundation entry point grant.
Yeah, good point. So just there's a couple of slides on kind of the process, and we don't need to go into sort of nth degree of detail because there's a guidance document that we can send across sort of afterwards. But as we say, the sort of very basic step is step 1 is the pitch power assessment, and then have you got the ownership and the permission to carry out the works? There's Grass Pitch Maintenance Fund website via the Football Foundation page. When you get your pitch power assessment report through, there's a little sort of 4 or 5 digit ID code. That is really important, and you need to make a note of that. And if you're not sure what it is, feel free to get in touch with Mark or myself. But that essentially, when you go on to applying for the grass pitch maintenance funding, that ID, that pitch power assessment ID, will pull through what amount of funding you're eligible for. So when you go onto that online application form, you're asked to pop in that ID, and then it pulls through the number of pitches that you submitted on your pitch power assessment, the quality of those pitches, and as a result of those two things, how much funding you're eligible for via the grass pitch maintenance funding. And then these next ones are kind of, once you've submitted, is the sort of steps it takes. So the Football Foundation are turning these applications around really quickly. So within a 2-week period at the moment. And then once you've obviously got confirmation of funding, you can then start that procedure of going out to your contractors, like Mark said, going out, getting a tender from sort of 2 or 3 local contractors, and picking who you want to go with, and then getting the work underway, essentially. And as I mentioned earlier on, a couple of slides ago, as part of the commitment, there's an expectation of an ongoing pitch power submission twice a year, as you can see on there. And then you draw down the funding yearly. in line with that kind of 6-year agreement that would all be explained on the application form and on any grant offer letter that you get.
That's a really important point, Matt, around the continuous pitch power uploads. Is it what it allows sites to do? They're constantly getting feedback on the quality of their pitches and whether they're going in the right direction. So, I mean, I know Ash is always there at the end of the phone in an email, but there's a mechanism there in place that automatically they get a report every 6 months as soon as they do their submissions. And they're getting constant feedback over. Well, they can see they can see whether the work that they're doing and the effort that they're putting in is actually having an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And this really is just sort of highlighting the support and, you know, working in partnership, how it will help to improve the pitch quality. As I say, first 2 years 100% funding is probably the really positive thing there. That gives you as a club an opportunity to think about how do you start to increase your contribution to the maintenance budget from year 3 onwards. The pitch power assessments, it builds up a picture of the site itself, but also nationally what the pitch quality looks like. From year 7 onwards, like it says there, how do you continue to keep those pitches at a good standard? And it's about building up that within your club, budgeting within your club and committing to it, really, I suppose, because there's obviously benefits if you can get more games played, particularly those clubs and sites where you've got potential income from bar and cafes and teas and coffees and things like that. The less games you get called off, and the more games you get and the more footfall you get through your sites and people playing, is you keep your players and your members interested, but you also get that secondary spend on the site as well. So some real benefits to making sure we can get, keep games on. I think there's a bit around from a player perception as well. I think it helps to attract players, speaking just purely from a personal perspective, but if you're going to a facility in a club that have got good quality grass pitches and are committed to that, then it makes it more attractive. From a playing perspective, it might help you to attract more players as well. I think that's it on the funding slides in particular. Mark, have I missed any bits?
No. There's a couple of questions in.
Do you want me to?
I can go through them. So
go on,
Alan said, great seminar and giving affirmation as well as great tips. We have a tiny budget and are desperate to fund a ride on a small tractor as we hand mow with 2 small petrol mowers. So I think the answer to that one is, we've kind of covered it in terms of get a pitch power report, have a chat with Ashley, get the recommendations in the pitch power report for the machinery that you need, and then you'll be able to come in for funding via the Football Foundation. We've got Kazim who's asked, how might we go about dovetailing funding for football pitches with funding for cricket square maintenance? Ash, do you want to, or Matt, do you want to answer that?
Just repeat that question again, sorry.
How might we go about dovetailing funding for football pitches with funding for cricket square maintenance?
So the Football Foundation funding obviously is to improve the grass football pitches and shouldn't be used against the cricket wicket, I suppose, is the main thing. I guess the football pitches may well be on the cricket outfield, so that kind of maintenance program is pretty key to make sure it sort of meets both needs, but it wouldn't fund the cricket wicket improvements.
Ash, are you aware of any funding available from the ECB?
Unfortunately, there isn't any funding available from the ECB at the moment. We do have regional pitch advisors who cover cricket. They would advise you on which routes to go down to find any kind of funding, but I know there's not funding from the ECB, not currently.
Okay. Harry's asked, would a local authority be able to apply for a club? Matt, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, happy to take that. No, at the moment, it's got to be club driven at the moment. However, the Football Foundation did write out to all local authorities prior to Christmas, September, October time. The Football Foundation and FA are very aware that local authorities still maintain quite a large stock of pitches, and they are piloting with a number of local authorities I suppose, similar program to the grass pitch maintenance funding, to obviously get all of the pitches assessed and work on sort of funding support to help that. But at the moment, the grass pitch maintenance fund is purely club applications.
Perfect. A nice note from Paul, just to reaffirm, anyone considering using the program, it's definitely worth it because they got a brand new tractor and a mower, and the pitch has improved significantly just by being cut correctly. Kazim asked another question. Is there any advice available to draw up an equipment list that is most appropriate for their facility, that could form an application for machinery grant funding application?
Well, again, they'd have to do their pitch power report, and it would be recommended in their report.
Yeah, happy to pick that one up with Kasim as well, because on S Gloucestershire site. So yeah, I'll pick that one with you, Kasim.
Is there separate funding available to fence off pitches? Matt, do you want to jump on that?
Yes, the small grants, the Football Foundation does sort of small grant scheme which can be used to access things like perimeter fencing, but not for, it wouldn't be, pitch railings wouldn't be an eligible item, but perimeter fencing, ball stop netting, those sort of items would be eligible. If you're a National League system club, then Football Stadium Improvement Fund that Mark mentioned earlier on could be a route to go down, where that club have to meet ground grading requirements. So yeah, it depends, Alan, if sort of what you mean in terms of fencing, whether it's perimeter fencing, that's health and safety type thing, or whether it's sort of pitch railings that you mean.
Yeah, we've had some sites have be funded for rabbit fencing as well, which is obviously quite significant in terms of improving the quality of the pitch. So I think the answer is quite open in a sense that most things that would generally improve the quality of your playing surface, be that through maintenance or through basically improving this kind of the surrounds of the site to make sure rabbits and bits and pieces aren't getting on it, then that would definitely be considered.
Also seen it at one club with badgers that their pitch was fenced off with badger fencing, and it's really made a difference.
We've got wild boars in the Forest of Dean in Gloucestershire, so any clubs from the Forest will know the challenges there.
We got badges in devices. Really interesting session from John at Ramsbury. Once you start an assessment in the tool, can you complete it in stages before submission? Good question. Ash, do you want to take that?
Yeah, you can complete it in stages, but I think if you go past, if it's not submitted before, say, the mandatory submission windows, you'll lose all your data and have to do the whole assessment again.
Yeah. And then I think it's Andrew Briggs is asking, how is the DCMS funding going to be distributed? Is there opportunities outside of pitch improvement funding to apply for funding? There's facility improvements, local authorities, i.e. changing rooms alongside pitch improvements. Matt, do you want to pick that one?
Yeah. Well, you may have already come across local football facility plans. So an FA Football Foundation document that was developed over the last couple of years. So every local authority will have one of those in place. And that sort of identifies a list of priority projects. Gloucestershire in particular were in tranche one of that. So we're actually coming up probably at some point during 2022 for a refresh of those. But that will really help determine and prioritise alongside a playing pitch strategy where there's one in place, where the right sites are for investment. A lot of the focus, as Mark mentioned way back at the beginning, is around on the pitch. So 3G pitches, grass pitches, purely because of the returns you get in terms of participation and outcomes. Changing rooms, things like that are eligible, particularly if it's around alongside improving the pitch quality as well and in increasing usage on the site. But a lot harder to justify in terms of big, larger capital grants, I'd say.
Yeah, I'll just jump onto that one as well, Matt. Sorry, I kind of threw that.
Sorry, no, you go.
It's Wiltshire, and then I threw it onto you.
Cheers.
Andrew, just in terms of the local facility football plans for Swindon, if you Google it, you'll see a list of projects, and I think off the top of my head, a lot of your key sites like Mannington, Southbrook, Penn Hill, I think a lot of those changing rooms are included in the LFFP. So if there's some kind of strategic conversation to be had with the parish around upgrading them changing rooms, then I think the answer is yes. And then, as Matt touched on, Morden is a direct example of the DCMS funding, where we're obviously looking to create strategic hubs, which you're heavily involved in. Alan's come back and just said perimeter fencing. It's perimeter fencing he's after.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say I can't remember what club you're from, Alan, but get in touch with Mark or get in touch with myself, and we can send over the Football Foundation sort of small grants guidance and give you some advice and next steps on
that. Paul's saying it's great, very much appreciated. It's been difficult times for us all. Is there anything clubs can do to support county FAs? Is just paying our fees enough? Yeah. Matt,
yeah, I'm happy to take that. I think, firstly, thank you, because that's, we don't always get nice comments and feedback like that as county FAs. But you're right, it's been really tough and challenging times for everyone and everyone's lives, and everything has changed massively, hasn't it, over the last 24 months. The most pleasing thing is football is being played again now, and as all we'd say from a county FA perspective, I think since football's returned, I think parent behaviour on the touchline has been quite challenging, and we've seen quite a drastic increase in that. So if you're a youth club in particular, remind your parents of codes of conduct and touchline behaviour. But yeah, I think from a facilities perspective, it's engaging with this programme, getting onto pitch power and getting your assessments in, and yeah, just continue to sort of talk to us, really, I suppose, from a county FA perspective. Don't know if you want to add anything, Mark.
No, I think that's a really good answer. We're indebted to everyone that's kept the game going.
Absolutely.
It's been incredible. It's been an incredible 18 months, 2 years, and the fact that we're hopefully coming out at the end of it, and football's in a relatively healthy place, despite all. We appreciate you do loads of work already, but with all the COVID restrictions and like the change in pitch, it was constantly just creating more work for people, and the effort that people went to get people playing football, it was astronomical. We're just really grateful.
Yeah, definitely. think there's one other question that's just popped in. There's a thank you from Estates, but I don't know who that was. Mark, you said someone from Virta, I think.
Andrew.
Andrew, sorry. And then he's just asked, can we get Ashley's contact info post meeting? I think we've got it on a slide maybe in a moment, but if not, yes. And also it will be included on any clubs who submit pitch power assessments. You'll get it on there as well. And we'll make sure we share it. Looks like that's it for any additional questions coming in the chat. I'll just pop back onto the presentation mode, because when you all signed up, there was the opportunity for anybody to submit questions prior to this evening. So just bear with me. Is that still showing as questions on your screen at the moment?
Yeah.
Mark, has that gone on now to the next slide? Is it showing questions now? Sorry.
Yeah, showing the questions.
Yeah. So I'll just run through some of these. I think hopefully we've covered most of them throughout this evening. If we haven't, pop it in the chat or let us know. So there's one that come in prior to tonight around Virta draining, how to address high costs and embed into the annual pitch maintenance programme. I think, like we say, it's the pitch power assessment and report will give you the recommended number of times that needs to happen. And then the grass pitch maintenance funding should hopefully open up the opportunity for clubs to access that. There was a question around improving drainage over sort of 10% of the pitch. I think the sort of advice there is around increased maintenance programme, increased Virta draining, should hopefully help to improve some of that pitch drainage challenges and issues.
Yep.
Ash, feel free to jump in if there's anything I'm missing.
Well, that sums it up really. You want to try deep tine aeration, or there's another form of aeration called linear aeration, which basically like cuts a slot through the pitch, which is another good way. You'd want to try that first before, as it says here, a professional agronomist would take a closer look if there was a further issue with the pitch that was stopping drainage, stopping the surface water disappearing.
Perfect. There was a couple of questions that come in around goal mouths and keeping them in good conditions, kind of end of the season renovations, which I think hopefully you covered off in your slides in enough detail, Ash.
Within the season, I mean, if you've got, I mean, don't, like Matt was saying earlier, we're things are stipulated by the weather, but if you've got if it's still warm, you can still put seed down through the season, and it's just touching up your goal mouths with a fork and chucking a bit of seed in there. Even if you're going to play on it the following week, say after the match, get some seed in the ground. If the weather conditions are right, and generally September, October time, the soil temperature is actually higher than it will be in the spring because you've had the warmer months on it previous. You potentially could still get germination, and if you had some germination sheets, you can buy like pretty cheap, like sort of single use, or you can use them say twice. If you didn't have a game on it for 3 or 4 days, you could put the germination sheet down and you might get some grass germinating in the season. So still worth trying to do that as well, or again putting some sports sand down, which will help as well, just in your goal mouths. So, yeah.
A good question that came in beforehand was what volume of games is appropriate for grass pitches. I bet a lot of groundskeepers will probably say none at all, but obviously the players and the clubs and the coaches want to get out on them as much as possible. So there's a little bit of advice and guidance there. Obviously, it depends on the pitch quality, doesn't it? Ultimately, Ash, I think is. Yeah,
absolutely. If you've got a good maintenance program and you're doing the things that are recommended in your report, that will determine how many games can be played on your pitch. But that is a good guide. But I guarantee that a lot of pitches are used a lot more than that.
and it's a lot of it's around timing as well, Ash, isn't it? So like, obviously, if you get a torrential downpour on a Friday, you've got to understand that it's not the best thing to be doing to play on your pitch on a Saturday.
No. I mean, especially if it's like the start of the season, if you go and play on your pitch straight after a torrential downpour, you're just going to ruin it for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Perfect. There's something around sort of bumpy playing surfaces, poor drainage, and I think Mark and yourself highlighted that pretty well. Don't roll your pitches, basically.
Don't roll it. You should get out, and I know divoting's time consuming, but you'd be better off divoting it or running your groomer across it. Even running the mower across it would be better than rolling it.
Yeah. Question. I think we've touched on this one already, but what can and can't be done with pitches owned by local council? As I say, grass pitch maintenance fund at the moment is club driven project, so there's a maintenance agreement that you can go and hopefully get signed by your local authority, but it is very much club driven. User agreements in 10 years, again, we've mentioned that if you don't have security of tenure on the site via a long-term lease or license, then there is that pitch maintenance agreement that can be signed by your landlords. How often would you spike a pitch? Again, I think we've kind of talked about this throughout the presentation. And
I mean, there's not really a limit. I mean, I've put fortnightly there because of budget constraints, really. But if you had your own spiker, as long as the conditions were right, you could spike, twice a week. It wouldn't actually do any harm, but obviously you're then running that machine across it. So fortnightly, I think, is a good standpoint to go by.
Cool. There's a bit around funding for creating flat drained grass pitches and further grants and plans going forwards. I think we've covered this throughout the presentation. I say the first step is the pitch maintenance fund and the grass pitch maintenance. The pitch power assessment and the grass pitch maintenance funding, and trying to enhance the existing maintenance. It may be with a year or two's enhanced maintenance, there may be some deeper underlying problems that, there may be a project further down the line to explore drainage if that's really what's needed on site. But that obviously gets into a lot more detail and additional requirements of kind of agronomist reports, etc.
Yeah, and if that was the case, and we tried, more aeration with the grass pitch maintenance fund, I would then initially come out and look at the ground. If I can't, at least find out what the issues are, I would then recommend like Matt just said, an agronomist. And there is within the GMA another branch called the Turf Care Advisory that would have their own agronomist that could come out and have a look.
Brilliant.
We've had a couple of clubs access that, Ash, and the level of detail that comes in the agronomist reports are quite scary, to be honest.
Alex Vickers does it.
Yeah,
he
it's
is
unbelievable.
I did my level 3 cricket course with him, and he's just amazing. He knows his stuff, and he's so passionate about it.
Yeah.
And there's it costs a little bit of money to start with, but the follow-up you get afterwards, he's there on dropping you emails for free after that for quite a long period of time, and there's a high level of support afterwards, so it's well worth the money.
Definitely, I can think of a couple of sites across Gloucestershire that have accessed that as well.
Yeah.
There was a question around have a big problem with worm cast. Do you know if any of the treatments available actually work, or are they wasting club money?
From at a grassroots level, I feel that treating worms with any chemicals at the moment probably is not worth it, because it only, like I've written there, it only lasts for maybe a couple of months because it makes the surface more acidic, which then makes the worms go deeper for a little while. Doing your cultural methods like your grooming and removing organic matter can help, because that then reduces the amount of feed that the worms have to feed, grass and organic matter they have to feed on. Also, dressing helps, because that then makes the surface sort of abrasive to the skin of the worm, and then the worm, they go down slightly deeper, so the cast isn't then on the surface. And so, like regular brushing when it's dry, that will get rid of your worm casts. It's a really difficult one because there are no chemicals on the market anymore, And like I said, there are some products that will kill worms, but they kill every single worm, and they are not designed to do this and shouldn't be used for that. It is actually illegal to use them for that purpose, other than soil. They are branded as soil conditioners. So that's something to be aware of. If a contractor comes to you and says, "Oh, I can put this down, it'll kill your worms," make sure you find out what it is. And if you're unsure, then contact me and I'll advise you on what to do.
Thanks, Ash.
Okay.
I think that was it for questions that we had submitted prior. Ash, this was your slide. Do you want to talk a little bit around this one?
Yeah, it's just we did it last year. I mean, and it's all about raising the profile of grounds, grounds people. So Grounds Week is from the 28th of February to the 6th of March, and it's basically if you share any social media relating to grounds or your pictures, then if you put hashtag Grounds Week on it, it really highlights what volunteer groundsmen and professional groundsmen or grounds people do. And it's, yeah, like I said, it's all about raising the profile of it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ash.